right, it's great to be here, to see some longtime friends. I don't say old friends anymore, that's always a negative reaction. But I'm thrilled to be here, and I have some things that I want to talk about. The real purpose of my presentation is to inspire questions and hopefully get some inputs from all of you. Just so you know, next week I'm traveling to Colorado Springs to go to our Corona Fall Conference where all the 4-stars get together and we talk about relevant issues of the day. As you know, I've been in position here now for roughly about 3 months, and there's some things that I'm very interested in. There's both on our mission side and on our people side. And so, but I wanted to run through a couple of things, just kind of give you my perspective on the business at hand. And then I'll invite my command chief to come up and say a few words. And then we're going to answer some questions. No holds barred on the questions. You can ask whatever you want. If I know the answer, I'll tell you. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you, and I'll find out. I promise you, some of you may not like the answer. I can assure you of that. But I'll give it to you exactly the way I see it. And then we can discuss it further. This is my perspective. Next slide. Thank you. You want me to take this? I got like 5 mics. Okay. Here's my overview. Next slide. I always start my discussions with a historical lesson that all of you need to know for various reasons. Some of you are very, very young. My youngest is 23 years old. I know some of you are younger than that. I graduated from college in 1979. Usually there's a gasp in there. It wasn't even born, holy cow. But the bottom line is, the purpose of this history is kind of describe you one phenomenon that you need to know in our business, and that is change is inevitable. And here's the backdrop. When I came in the United States Air Force in 1979, I graduated from the Air Force Academy. I walked into the Cold War Air Force. Who here knows what the Cold War was? Okay? I know some of you raised your hands, but you really don't know. And I wasn't counting, but you know what? It doesn't matter. It was an Air Force that was 600,000 people strong, active duty. It was designed to be as far forward as possible to meet the threat of the Soviet Union. In Europe, there was literally a base every 40 kilometers, and there were either soldiers or airmen, and there were airplanes all over the place. When I came here, when I entered the Air Force, we had a giant Air Force for good reason, because at stake was thermonuclear Armageddon. You know, the world was actually very stable then. It was a fantastic Air Force to be in. We flew like crazy. It was fantastic. I really loved it. And I operated in that environment for 10 years. And then something weird happened. We won. We won the Cold War. Symbolically, that was the Berlin Wall falling. And then all of a sudden, the entire environment that we were operating in changed. It took exactly 17.5 minutes for some politician in Washington to say, hey, the war's over, we need to downsize. We need a peace dividend. That was the verbiage that they used. And so that was the beginning of the downsizing of our forces that we're actually still in the middle of today. And the downsizing of the overseas presence in particular, and some closing of bases in the United States. That was the beginning. So that was the Cold War Air Force. It took exactly 2 years before one of those countries that used to be subdued for fear of causing too much agitation and inciting the superpowers into thermonuclear war, that guy, Saddam Hussein, said, you know what, Kuwait is mine. Him and 550,000 of his buddies get in their tanks. In an hour and a half, they're in Kuwait City, and Very quickly after that, the United States Air Force was deploying people to the AOR literally to protect one Muslim country from the other. Who would have expected that? Nobody. But it started the second bullet there, which is the no-fly zone Air Force. That was the beginning of the Expeditionary Air Force as we know it. When the Expeditionary Air Force started, we deployed for 90 days. It was fantastic. I loved the no-fly zone Air Force. I was completely comfortable in the no-fly zone Air Force. We went from an in-garrison force to a deployable force, and we went to the AOR quite often. I was a squadron commander at the time. It was fantastic. I took my squadron to Norway, to Turkey, to Iraq. It was fantastic. Combat zone exclusion, you know, it was beautiful. I loved it. We extended the deployment cycle from 90 to 120 days. Oh no, you know, that was painful going through that process, but we did it. And we went on our business. The operators and the maintainers were very, very busy. You know, they were the ones that were stressed. In the meantime, the peace dividend continued, even though our ops tempo and purse tempo were actually increased 2-3-fold, and we kept on operating like that. But then something happened. It's called 911. 911 happened. Anybody remember that day? As the group commander at Kadena, my son wakes me up. It's like 10 o'clock at night, and he goes, "Dad, you got to come and watch the TV." I'm going, "No, I'm doing something tomorrow." He goes, "No, not really, you're not." So we go to the TV. The North Tower is already on fire. Remember that? And then you're watching TV, and that little blur comes in from the lower right-hand part of the screen, and we literally visually watched something unprecedented, an attack directly on American soil. 2 hours later, both of the buildings are on the ground. Immediately, we are in the third global war on terror Air Force. It kind of looked like the no-fly zone Air Force, except now, all those bases that we closed for the peace dividend, remember that? Won't need those anymore. You know, we had to build them all back up. And we had to man them in an expeditionary way. And it created ops tempo problems in the mission support area. So now the maintainers are busy, the operators are busy, the support elements are busy in the MSG, and the med group's busy because we got people all over the place at all kinds of different locations. By the way, did I mention I love the no-fly zone Air Force? And clearly we are in the global war on terror Air Force, but I do believe that we are in the cusp of the fourth Air Force that we would be operating in, the fourth Air Force that I will have experienced in my 34 years. I don't really know what to call it yet. For now, I call it the Global War on Terror Air Force in a Severe Fiscal Environment. That is what we're moving to. And so the whole point behind this is just as you get comfortable doing what you're doing in your business, getting used to the ops tempo of deployment, getting used to the business that you're doing, something happens inevitably, and clearly we are absolutely out of sync in organizations and force structure and anything else. And now we got to make an adjustment is the way that we're operating. And you all are experiencing that. And you know what? Just like the 3 times before, it is unbelievably painful. It is going to irritate you beyond belief. It is going to irritate your family beyond belief as we make these adjustments. But one thing that I do know is that we're going to make the adjustment and we're going to come out of it better than we did before. And so what I'm going to do today is offer you a couple of tools to help you through this change. Next slide. The basics. When change happens, I'm asking each and every one of you to concentrate on the basics. For me, these are the basics. I'm going to talk about them quickly, But what I did when I went through all of this and when I was irritated, I basically went back and said, hey, I'm going to concentrate on the mission. I'm going to concentrate on leadership. I'm going to concentrate on safety. I'm going to concentrate on loyalty. And I'm going to concentrate on discipline. And in the end, if there's anything you take out of this briefing from me, I want you to know you should do the bottom in the banner. As we go through this, trust your leadership, respect your peers, and mentor your subordinates as you go through this change. If you don't, you're going to find yourself going absolutely crazy along the way. Okay? So let's talk about mission. Next slide. Fly, fight, and win in aerospace and cyber. That's our mission. The chief recently put out 2 of these documents that I want to briefly highlight. I think every airman should know what's in these 2 documents. What's in these 2 documents is the roadmap on our way to the Air Force of 2023. I'll talk about that in just a second. And the vision that the chief put out, which I agree with and had a hand in making, is the world's greatest Air Force powered by airmen, fueled by innovations. There's 3 elements of that vision statement that I want you to concentrate on. Number 1, it's a clear statement that despite budgetary constraints, we are committed to maintaining and retaining the tag of being the world's greatest Air Force. There's an acknowledgement there that the only way that we're going to do that is because we're going to count on our people, on our airmen, to power us to that level. And how are we going to do it? We're going to count on innovation, which is our heritage. This is a people business. And that's what that vision statement calls for. The follow-on document is a global vision, global vigilance, global reach, global power for America. And in that document, he reaffirms the 5 things that America expects from its Air Force. We do air and space superiority. We do intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. We do rapid global mobility. We do global strike. And then we wrap it all up with exquisite and flexible command and control that provides the most precise combat power from airspace and cyberspace. You need to identify with these missions. That's not a problem for this wing. You do a lot of that right now as we speak. Okay? And we need to reinforce that. Basically, the chief says, hey, if we're doing stuff that does not support those 5 core missions, we're going to stop doing it. It's as simple as that. But before we stop doing anything, we're going to listen to you to make sure that it's the right thing to do. Why? Because our Air Force is powered by you, where the rubber meets the road. Now, I mentioned Air Force 2023. Why Air Force 2023? Because 2023 is the year that the sequester ends. Everybody familiar with Budget Control Act sequester in the news? That's $50 billion a year from the Defense Department, of which $13.6 million comes from the Air Force. That's a 10-year proposition. The chief said, we're not going to get any relief on this. The country's in a severe fiscal austerity, and we're going to be part of the solution. That's causing a lot of irritation right now among our airmen. We can talk about that a little bit later. But the bottom line is airmen plus core missions equals global vigilance, global reach, global power. I expect you to know that. I expect you to know that vision, because it is the mission. And the mission is our rudder. Our mission is our North Star. The problem is if you're on a boat with no rudder and you get somewhere, you think you're supposed to be there. Okay? So don't wander. Always go to the mission to ground yourself. Next slide. Leadership. That's my favorite quote. This is leadership versus management. Managers do things right, leaders do the right thing. Okay? It's a little play on words, you know, but the meaning of those 2 statements couldn't be any more diametrically apart. We are in the business of growing leaders. We are looking for people that do the right thing, not just that people that do things right. Okay? And there's A breakdown from General Creech. By the way, I steal everything. There's not one original idea in this briefing, to be perfectly honest. But the bottom line is, I think General Creech says it best. That there's a list of things that I really love. I like the bottom line on General Creech's. Leaders create more leaders, managers create more managers. If we do not create leaders in the United States Air Force, this house of cards is going to fall soon. And so it's all incumbent upon us to find those that do the right thing and promote them before just people who do things right. We have a lot of people in the United States Air Force that just do things right. Okay? Next slide. Safety. Safety is not a program, it's a way of life. The bottom line is all of us need to look at safety as a mission issue, not as a prevention of sad story issue. They are sad stories. We will prevent a lot of sad stories. But the bottom line is we have a problem with safety, particularly off base. Now, I put those slides in there. You don't have to look at the data. Here's the data. For every airman that we lose on base, we lose 10 off base. And that's been the prevailing trend for decades. And by the way, most at risk are 18 to 23-year-old males. Just saying. Not picking on you, you're out there. But the bottom line is a basic is safety. And you have to concentrate on that, because guess how long it takes to replace a 10-year NCO? It's not a trick question. It's 10 years. And the idea that somehow we can lose people at this rate, given the size we are, without any effect on the force, is complete nonsense. This is a readiness issue for us. You should concentrate on safety. Next slide. Loyalty. I'm not talking about strategic loyalty, you know, loyalty to the nation and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about tactical level loyalty. I'm talking about once your supervisor makes a decision, implement that decision like it was your own. We have way too many people carping about the way that we're doing things for no particularly good reason. That is disloyal. And I use it, quite honestly, as a measure of whether or not somebody's ready to be promoted, and I'll tell you how it works. When I became the wing commander twice, I got the group commanders in and said, hey, by the way, my name is Frank Gorenc, I'm the wing commander. Here's what I want you to do. In a meeting, in public, I don't really care. If I'm moving towards a decision, I want you to speak out if you think that I am doing something wrong. I want to debate it with you. I want to talk about it with you. I want to hash it out in any form. Some people don't like the public part of that, but that's okay. It's up to you. But the bottom line is, once I gather all of the inputs from everybody that I'm associated with, and I make a decision, I expect you to implement it like it was your own. And if you don't do it the first time, you're going to hear about it. If you don't do it the second time, you're going to read about it. And if you don't do it the third time, I'm going to fire you. You know why? Because it's my turn to be the wing commander, not yours. This is a developmental issue. And I'll show you a slide on what I feel about development. But the ability to make a decision and have airmen abide by that decision while we try to reach a goal is exclusively mine when I'm in charge. And we need to be very selfish about that, because if you don't do that, we're not going to develop the leaders that learn how to always do the right thing. Okay? That's why, for me, in times of change, loyalty was a basic. Next slide. Discipline. Discipline promotes mission focus, good order, excellence when no one is watching. By the way, if you have an airman that does an excellent job when nobody's looking over their shoulder, promote them as fast as you can. That is an unbelievably valuable asset to our United States Air Force, and it doesn't happen every day. Okay? But more importantly, discipline overcomes that changing world that we always talked about, the seemingly chaotic environments, but more importantly, Personal weaknesses and overwhelming temptations. I don't need to remind all of you that we get our force from every strata of society. Some come from stable environments, some come from unstable environments. We welcome them all. That diversity is important. Having people look at the same problem with a different eye is really important. But the bottom line is they also come to us with personal weaknesses and overwhelming temptations. And my goal as a supervisor is to give each and every one of those airmen an opportunity to succeed. And discipline, on and off duty, is what I expect from every airman. Because in this environment, you're not going to get a second chance. It's just that easy. The competition is too big. Okay? Discipline is a tough thing to explain. I found the perfect picture for discipline. Next slide. Okay, what I love about this photo, and it's obviously just a metaphor, but take a look at those military working dogs and see where they are. There's a couple that are looking at that cat and they're about to go after it. There's a couple that are looking away, looking for their handler because they want permission. But every one of them are at a different place. But every one of them is practicing discipline. And each one of them need to be reinforced that now is not the right time. Sit down, be quiet, and don't get yourself in trouble. Okay? Discipline. When things were changing and I was getting dissatisfied, you know, I would basically commit myself to making sure that I kept the straight line and kept doing what I was supposed to do. In my case, I was an aviator, that I would fly my airplane in accordance with the checklist. I would follow all the procedures and all that kind of stuff. That's what discipline meant to me. That's what I practiced. Did I stumble along the way? You bet I did. Lucky I didn't get caught. But in the end, that's what we're asking you to do. Next slide. So those are the basics. Those 5 things. Now, I'm just one senior leader. I'm sure there are others. All of you are very accomplished leaders. You may have more basics you want to talk about with your airmen. Knock yourself out. Whatever's been successful for you. But in the end, I ask each and every airman to have some basics to overcome those chaotic environments that come and come very often just when you get comfortable. Okay, I want to talk about professional development real quick. After 34 years, that's my view of professional development. 3 things, and they have to be in balance. Education, training, and on-the-job opportunities. Education is lifting all boats of knowledge. Training is specific training designed to accomplish your job with the authority and the accountability that you're supposed to have for whatever you do. They're 2 different things. And then, of course, I alluded to it before with one of the basics, on-the-job experience. That's how we develop our people. For those of you that don't understand the difference between education and training, people confuse it. Let me just describe it this way. If you want to teach your teenager about the birds and the bees, would you put them in education or training? You'll never forget it again. That's important to separate those 2 because sometimes we have airmen that are really confused about the differences and they get completely unbalanced. What I mean by this slide is that stool has to stand up. That means the legs of those stool have to be approximately the same length. If you're really good just on education, you're not as valuable as if you're balanced. If you think you're going to just do your job and compete at a higher level for those higher level ranks, you're not going to compete well because you're not professionally balanced. Okay? Just know it. We have many airmen that take themselves out of the game because they insist on not doing the things that will provide them the balanced development that is demanded by today's Air Force. And then they get there and they wonder what happened. And they get bitter at the system. I wish somebody would have told me this earlier. you know, I ended up doing okay, but believe me, it was by luck. Okay, next slide. Our workforce. I want to share this slide with you. I discovered this chart when I was a brigadier general. I went to a course, and I love this chart because roughly it describes the workforce that we have. We have, in the upper right-hand corner, you can see vertical is potential, horizontal is performance. We have a small group of percentage of people up there that are self-starters. My experience is we have about 10% of our workforce that knows exactly who they are, what they are, where they want to go, and every day they deliver top-notch performance, and they have great potential. Then we have this group down here that delivers great performance every day, but their potential is not very good for a lot of reasons, a lot of different reasons. Sometimes they're just not like morning people, you know, so they're cranky in the morning and do wacky stuff, that kind of deal, don't show up to work on time. They're solid citizens. I love solid citizens. I mean, that's the heart of our force. In the upper left-hand corner, we have learners. They have great potential, but their performance, for whatever reason, is not as high as it could be. And then you have a very small group of people that are in the lower left-hand corner. That used to be filled in, but I elected to go with none of the above because I offended somebody along the way. But the bottom line is these are the people that neither perform at a high level nor have any potential. Now, what do we do with that uneven workforce? What are we asking to do with the uneven workforce? My commitment is to make sure that I provide the opportunity for every airman to succeed. My goal is to take all of those folks and work them up and to the right and make them viable members. And that's what you should do too. The second reason I like this slide is I've used this slide before, and I've asked an airman and said, where do you think you are here? You know, and then invariably you get the person that goes, man, I'm about as upper right as you can get. But the fact of the matter is they're not there. In many cases, they're far from there. And so for me as a leader, I use that feedback because you know what? I didn't give this person very good feedback. Why do they think they're so good and yet they're not? It's because I failed as a leader to give them the proper feedback and the tools that they needed to work their way to the upper right-hand corner. That's a failure of leadership. Let me just say, we have a problem with this in the United States Air Force. Feedback. It's not, we don't have a problem walking up to somebody and go, you know what? You are the best airman in the world. Congratulations. Awesome. We're less inclined to go, you know what? Your performance is substandard. We never do that. The problem is when you don't do that, you don't offer the opportunity for the airmen to get that feedback in a necessary time where they can recover and work their way to success. And that's what we should be doing. This microcosm of no proper feedback face-to-face has kind of drifted its way into our EPR, OPR system. You know, I've looked at thousands of records in my life, and I'm to the point now where I can take a record and I can't tell who's good and who's not good from the record. We've put ourselves in that situation. Okay? And so we got to get better at that. And we got to understand our workforce. By the way, the other thing you can do is take this into your supervisor and go, where do you think I am? I think I'm over here. You may not like the news. My point is you have to fight for feedback in our system for now until we solve this. And until we solve it, we're going to have a challenge meeting our mission, particularly as we get smaller and the resources get less. Okay? Now, the only other thing I want to do here, because I think I'm going to let the chief talk, and then we'll take some questions. But I want to talk a little bit about personal accountability. Can you go back one slide? I want to talk about personal accountability. This is what's required for your development. You need to be as active as me to provide you those opportunities, and you should be taking these opportunities. You know, we're an Air Force that provides lots of good things to our people, but the fact of the matter is we have people that pass on the opportunities for whatever reason. The fact of the matter is we live in a system that's a triangle, and people get popped out the side as they go higher in rank. So the only way you can control your destiny is by making sure that you have all the training, all the education, and all of the on-the-job experiences that you need to get better. That's your responsibility, not mine. And as a commander and as a supervisor, if you are one, if you're giving folks that feedback and you're creating the environment to succeed, and yet they don't take it, then so be it. There's only so much you can do. I only worry about the things that I can control. I can control the environment, I control the resources to get that development, but I can't make you go. You know, and we had a lot of people, not so much now, I have to admit, but it is an ongoing issue, is, you know, you get these guys that go, I don't want to do PME, I'm not doing it. It should be good enough that I do just my job. What planet are you on? Look at the quality of the people behind you and around you. You have to compete. You have to put your A game on. You know, and recognize the fact that in the end you're responsible for your own future. Okay? So what I'm going to do here is stop, give it to the chief, and then we'll answer all of your questions. You can take the briefing down. So, Chief.
All right, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Hey, thank you all for having us here today. I know everybody volunteered to be here. But it really is a pleasure. This is my first opportunity to come out with the boss, you know, and actually visit one of our locations here in USAFE. And I'm thrilled, you know, to be here in Sabre Nation. The things that we've been told, the things that we have seen, really does exemplify who you are and what you're doing on a daily basis. And I want to say thank you. Because as the boss has been saying, we're going through some challenging times right now. And we need each and every one of you all to be on board with what's happening in our United States Air Force. I asked a young man earlier this morning, what would he do with $100 billion? What would you do with that, Chief? You could buy the United States Air Force. That's the answer. We're still the world's greatest Air Force. And we have to keep that in mind. That regardless of what's going on, and regardless of what lies ahead, we're still the world's greatest Air Force. I've had the opportunity to serve in Iraq, Afghanistan, and in Africa. In all those locations, I trained the other forces to become capable and viable forces. And the one thing they would always ask me is, we want to be like you. Show us what you're doing. I want to wear your uniform. I want to put on your boots. I want to learn what you're doing. We're still the world's greatest Air Force. Don't ever forget that, regardless of what we're going through. And for us, as far as we're concerned, there are three things I want to know from you all when I go to different bases. Three things. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And how can we fix it? Because we're only as effective as you all allow us to be. And if you're not giving us the information, how can the general go to Corona and say, this is what USAFE needs? He can't. He can't. It becomes guesswork. And where he sits, he's not going to hear every day what's going on. But when we come out on these type of visits, that's when we can get the information. That's when we find out who's doing what. What are the innovations that are taking place at this installation that we can take back and impact the Air Force? That's the whole goal. How do we make the enterprise successful? That's what we really want to do. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I look forward to your questions. Sir?
Okay, before we open it up, let me just say also, I know that this wing just came back from a combat deployment, and I just want to congratulate you on an unbelievably successful deployment. Our The people on the ground in this conflict have come to expect some precise combat power from the air, and I'll tell you, this wing did not fail in that delivery. So I want to thank you very much for that. Okay, we do have lots of issues. It's good to be freed from the shackles of a government shutdown. Sequestration is ongoing, right? We got some challenges in a lot of areas, and so if you have any questions, the chief and I would be more than happy to answer.